Hey guys, Tarke here, and I'm going to talk all about Heist League. Before I get into it quickly, I just want to apologize for any mistakes I make in advance. I spent the whole day in hostel, so I'm very low energy going into this video. I've collected a bunch of Beck's comments that we'll read through, which clarify some of the league mechanics. And as I always do with my league videos, I will be giving my thoughts on the league, talking through some things I think could be good, some things I think could be concerns, and then I'll be going through some press footage that I got sent via Beck's. So, just to clarify the core mechanics, so some of the stuff that we've gotten from Beck's. The whole point of Heist League is you are going to be going onto Daring Heists. There are a team of 13 NPCs that you can see mess around in the trailer. Different NPCs have different skill sets. It's not a case of there's only one person who can pick locks. You kind of mix and match your crew based on what you want. And different crew members will have different benefits. There will be a light gearing system. Each NPC can have up to 4 pieces of gear equipped. It's not super mandatory. When you do jobs with certain NPCs, they gain XP, so it's kind of like you level up your crew. You'll probably have favorites. There will be a story. It's heavily implied via an interview Chris did with Ziggy, but he's kind of keeping it all very kind of like spoiler-free, didn't want to mention anything. So I imagine we'll build our relationships up with all the individual crew members. So the way the core gameplay loop works, there's a new currency system called like coins. I think it's rogue coins is the full term. Those will drop from monsters. I believe they'll just drop in monsters just anywhere out in the world. There are contracts. Contracts will drop out in the world. The team is discussing if contracts will drop from contracts. Contracts are like one-man heists. So you pick one NPC, you go to one contract. That's where you get XP just for that thing. You gain intel. And then the big heists are the grand heists, and that's when you have this much bigger thing where you have your full crew going in and you're exploring as much as you can. As you can kind of see a little bit here from the gameplay in the background, there is wings attached, and there's this whole intel system. One thing which is kind of cool about the intel system, if you watch my 3.12 mechanics I'd like to see, it's basically that. If you want to do the perfect grand heist, you want to spend the time and the resources researching everything, so you fully explore everything. You go into the grand heist knowing everything. You don't have to do that though. If you want to, you could go into the grand heist knowing the absolute minimum. The advantage of knowing anything is knowing like all the valuable loot in there, because it's a case that it doesn't seem like you can get all the loot at once. So now I'm just going to quickly read through some Beck's comments, then I'll get into my thoughts. If we stealth through and steal the artifact, will the escape still be timed? And there's also timers with escapes from Beck's. The escape isn't timed. Once the alarm goes off, either through capping your alert level or automatically when you steal artifacts, the timer gives you a short window to continue looting before you're swarmed by guards. Once the timer ends, the facility is in lockdown, which means no more looting from chests, and you can no longer steal the artifact. You have as much time as you want to escape. The pressure comes from the combat. Some more Beck's things. What is the difference between contracts and blueprints? Both seem to open heists. Beck's. Contracts lead to heists where you only seek an artifact and take one rogue with you. Completing them provides you with intel, rogue experience, and you'll trade the artifact in at the harbour in exchange for markers. Blueprints leads to grand heists, and you'll have up to 3 rogues per wing with you. They have huge reward rooms with exclusive rewards and require you to pay for intel to reveal more components to them. Compared to Incursion, heists are the incursions and grand heists are the temple. Then someone asks, how big of a map are heists? More like Incursion or more like a regular map? And Beck says regular heists, they're quite a bit bigger than incursions, kind of like a small map. Another series of questions here. Someone asks, so basically there's nothing stopping you from running a map, and there's just no point without it being unlocked, like a temple with no room links and no high-level rooms. Beck's. You'll need markers to contract people to come with you, but you definitely have control over how much you reveal and want in return from the grand heist. So we'll have to pick up blueprints and contracts. Will the markers also collect like sulfite or azurite or something? Or do we need to pick them up like silver coins or Perendus coins? I'm guessing the drop rate of blueprints is much lower than the drop rate of contracts, and we'll end up with extra blueprints that will never run. Is there talk of some way to recycle them, a recipe or something? Beck's. Most of the markers you'll get from completing heists. They'll drop in stacks when they come from regular monsters. You can trade extra blueprints to other players, and that's one thing about this league. Everything is tradable. So if you have an excess or like a shortage of something, you can buy or sell it off other people. Someone asks, I sure hope heists aren't locked to characters, not account. Beck's. Rogue progress is per league, not per character, so it's account bound. So with that in mind, let's get into some pros and cons, my initial thoughts on the league. And also, I'm going to bring up some footage. So one thing I want to say before I get into this is very early days, and one small complaint I have with the trailer, I really like how this league looks, but they don't ever show a full heist start to end. So because we haven't seen like a full gameplay loop, it's hard to have really informed opinions. I think I like this a lot. I struggle to come up with any like possible concerns. I do have some. And one that I will just get off the bat since I'm about to start play here. My initial only concern that I could really think of was we've got all these cool rogues that can open doors in special ways. We might maybe have an issue where some players hate waiting. Like, some people don't mind the roleplay. I personally don't mind roleplay. I don't mind a bit of the chill. But if you've got lots of, like, very drawn-out opening animations in a grand heist, we've got to go, like, 30 different doors, that could maybe get a bit tedious. So if you look at the start of this clip, 000, obviously, a rogue pops out, there's a little flip, kills the guard, pulls the lever, opens the door. It's like a 7-8 second long animation. 7 to 8 seconds, for some people that'd be too long. For other people that won't be long enough. It really just depends on where you're at with that. Compared to this one, however, this one's like 3 seconds long, so yeah. I went through, I watched a bunch of them, I timed a bunch of them. It seems like the average is about 3 to 5 seconds, and there are just like 1 or 2 rogues that were a bit on the longer side, which were more like 8 seconds long. So that's really just going to be one of those things where, in theory, if you really didn't like the like animations of one rogue, I guess you could just not ever have that rogue in your party. But it's something very easy for ZiggyD to speed up if they want to. They could just shorten stuff down. But you can see the average length of them like opening a door is about 3 to 5-ish seconds. So it shouldn't be that big of a deal, and it really just depends on how many doors you're opening. If it was a case of like every single rogue was around the 8 to 10 second mark, and we had to do like 6, for example, that'd be a whole minute of not doing anything. Also, maybe don't play Flicker Strike if you're going to be losing all your like frenzy charges and stuff. So I'm just going to like talk over this footage. So, positives. Things which seem cool about this league. It's different, but it's different in a way that makes sense to PoE. To me, at least, this seems like a very PoE kind of system. I can imagine this in the world of Rayclass. Some leagues seem a bit too out there. It's not like they're going, Pong, the league, you know. This makes sense. I think this is cool, and I'm really into the atmosphere and the theme, and I like the theme of this league a lot. It introduces a soft hardcore system. I used to only play hardcore. Now I've stopped doing softcore and hardcore, playing more softcore than hardcore. But I do like there being some punishment system in games, especially in a game which I play for, like, you know, 3 months at a time, ideally. So this has this contraband system where loot you pick up in heists is considered contraband, and you've got to successfully escape from the heist before the item's yours, and you can like sell it on and use it. So if you pick up some contraband items and you fail the heist, you lose the items. That will be a real negative for some people, because it's a case of, I picked up this thing, it's in my inventory. So for example, if you had like a contraband exalted orb, right? It's like, and you fail, you're like, but the ZiggyD stole an exalt from me. It's also a con. I think my biggest concern for this league is really just going to be the community reaction to contraband. People who like more hardcore systems will love it. People who don't will hate it. And yeah, it will just be a thing of people are going to have to get used to it. But I can definitely foresee a lot of early Reddit threads and forum threads complaining that this is an awful system, blah, 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 blah. A valid concern and complaint with the whole contraband system, though, is in the case of performance. So if heists end up being buggy, if there are any like major server issues, it could feel really bad, really, really bad in a case where you've spent all this time and currency exploring grand heists, because again, you can sell them. So like there's a core value there initially. So think of it like a 5-way monolith. So there's the initial value of your like 5-way monolith, or in this case, the grand heist. And then you've spent the time on the research and unlocking and doing all the intel. So you've done all the searching about all the info like that. Then you've picked up these really cool items. and then there's a crash or a DC, you lose it all. Now, you could say that any content with a fail state has that system, like Blight, Delirium, Monolith, etc. But anything where you're picking up loot, like if you crash during an instance, any loot you'd picked up in that instance you still have. So I don't know, that's just an issue, but I mean, server issues are always an issue, right? So, due to the fact that it is completely tradable, it means that in theory, you could theoretically just heist 24/7. And if you're someone who doesn't like heist that much, you could just sell it and not have to do it at all. It also, and I think this was the biggest success of Harvest League, because of how the system works, if you just stockpiled all of your coins, all of your contracts and everything for like a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, if you're like, I just don't understand the system, I just want to focus on getting my mapping enabled, I want to just be pushing, getting up to like tier 16s, want to get my Cirrus, want to get my Watchstones, you could completely ignore the system for a week and you don't fall behind. That I think was one of the best successes of Harvest League and was one of the biggest failures of something like, for example, Incursion, that you had to be playing on the game schedule. And this you could play entirely on your schedule. Again, I made a video a couple of days ago saying systems I'd like to see in 3.12, and this league really hits on all of those systems. It is very much player driven. You have full control over how you're engaging with the content, how much you want to engage with the content, and doing the content on your own timer. So I really appreciate how they've set up this league. I think that's a really big positive that cannot be overlooked enough. I think that's great. New skills. So we're seeing cursory works. We're seeing some new steel skills. We're seeing Firewall, which looks amazing. Firewall looks awesome. So Firewall makes a wall of fire. It's a dot. I'm hoping that I can make a pure dot Firewall build. And also, any projectiles you shoot through the firewall gain flat fire damage and apply a portion of the firewall's burn to the enemy. Awesome. Ever since, even like pre-ExileCon, but basically anything over ExileCon, they've done a really good job with making the skills have just landed. Like, it's very rare that a new skill hasn't felt good. They've done really good with their skill focuses this last year or so. Feels very, very interesting. So I'm very happy with the new skill system, and I cannot wait to do some cool Firewall builds. Also, and this is a very, very huge thing, it's group play friendly. So a lot of people don't know this. A lot of people always meme at me for only playing SSF or only playing private leagues. I used to only do duo play in Trade League. Back in the day, we're talking sort of around Mayhem-ish time. Anyone who's an old watcher of my channel remember Kane. Me and Kane, we used to always just play duo builds, playing together 24/7, doing Trade League shenanigans and hardcore Trade League. And it was a lot of fun. One of the reasons why we stopped playing together as much was the leagues just made group play feel awful. Like, we just had this massive slew of leagues where it was like whoever had the main progression, so like whoever's map it was, they were the only one progressing their league content. Syndicate was really bad for this. Bestry was good for it. But yeah, it was like everything from Syndicate onwards just was really bad for group play, Synthesis, etc., etc., etc. So if you're someone who likes to play in groups, then this is finally League, which is very group friendly. The whole research system is shared about because everything's fully tradable. You can have a thing where you could plan to do a grand heist with your friend. You know, you're unlocking all the research for the grand heist. You want to log out for the night. Your friend wants to keep playing. You could just give him the grand heist. He can keep unlocking more research for it. And then tomorrow when you log on, you can run the heist together. Also, because of how the whole contraband system works, one thing which is kind of neat is that if you're in a group of 2 people or 3 people or whatever, and you get overwhelmed and one of you dies with the contraband, in a single player experience, that would be a failed run. You'd lose the contraband. But in a group, your friend could go and pick up the contraband. So that's pretty cool. You could also have a situation where you then have like contraband supports. And one thing that I did fail to mention, which I'm very excited by skill-wise, was a new skill called Void Sphere. It's basically this massive black hole that sucks in enemies. CC skills are very interesting, and this is like a really big deal that they're introducing this. ZiggyD has never really done full CC skills for. I know people are like, but Tarke, Vol Cyclone, but Tarke, random knockback mechanic. Introducing CC skills is like a big game changer. So it looks very fun. Hopefully it doesn't lead to any degenerate gameplay systems. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing more of that, because anything which rewards positioning, anything that rewards like planning stuff out is great in my book. I love more utility skills. Utility skills are great. Another pro, you can just kill everything. You don't have to be sneaky. So the way the whole alert system works, you don't have to go like full snake. You don't have to just like sneak through everything. you gain alert mostly through opening doors and looting chests. So you don't have to wait for patrols to go by. You don't have to dodge all the guards. If you want to, you can go full sneak, master sneak, but you can just kill everything. I consider this both kind of like a pro and a con. So unless there's like a hard fail state, like this timer went to 0, you failed the run, what I imagine will most likely happen is once your characters are at least remotely set up, you go in, you loot all the chests, and then you just fight your way out of the instance, and it will be face roll. This will be a thing where it will just depend on how difficult the content really is, how good your build is, and this could maybe lead to a big disconnect, could maybe be a potential issue with the community of it being too hard or too difficult. I think Delirium was a pretty good example of that. People who had really strong builds for Delirium launch found it much easier than people who were kind of doing like kind of hipstery stuff, kind of doing their own wonky stuff. I know that I had a bit of a disconnect with my viewers because I was doing Caustic Arrow, surprise I know, with Arrow Nova, and I had really good avoidance, really good health sustain. So I was just running through maps, just running in a straight line, never standing still, and because I was always just moving, I didn't have half the issues that other people had with more static builds. So depending on how the difficulty system works, we might have a similar thing where it's like if you have a really strong league start, you might have a really easy time with it because it's like, oh, all right, just kill the guards and I peace out. Whereas if your stuff isn't quite as well thought out, it's like, this is too punishing. And since with contraband, if you die, you lose all your loot. Yeah, but, you know, if you have a bad build and stuff doesn't go well for you, then you shouldn't get the same rewards as someone doing really well. But anyway. So, possible negatives, some things that could maybe be some, like, issues. Again, I'm very positive for this league. If you're wondering why I have negatives, it's just how I do my league videos every time around. So this whole, like, dropping of the coins and dropping of the contracts, splinter-based gameplay can be great and it can be bad. So the good thing about splinter-based gameplay is you choose when you use your breachstones, you choose when you use your monoliths. The problem with splinter-based gameplay is how do the splinters drop? So when it comes to like the coins or the markers or whatever they're called, sorry, that drop from random enemies, is it a case of like you run a map and 50 drop? Is that 5 stacks of 10, 1 stack of 50, or worst case scenario, 50 stacks of 1? That never feels fun. If there's lots of small micromanaging and clicking, that could feel pretty rough. Also, on the topic of micromanaging, Chris said that we won't need to micromanage our rogues. They're like a soft mercenary system. They're only available in Heist. They won't follow around in maps. They are invulnerable. They can't die. Yes, there's the gearing, but it's not super mandatory. And it's also a potential soft test for maybe having mercs later down the line. So if you've ever wanted mercs in PoE, this is like a soft test for that. The lockpicking, door demolition stuff, as I showed at the start, that 8-second animation, it just depends on how patient you are as a player, the kind of build you're playing. If you're playing a build that has to have full momentum for like headhunter buffs or whatever, that waiting around could get a bit tedious, but that will just depend entirely on the person, and it's a very easy thing for them to tweak if they need to. And then it just finally ends on the contraband thing that I've mentioned before. Personally, I think contraband could be really fun. I can definitely foresee a lot of complaints coming in over contraband. So now I'm just going to talk through some random things that I just kind of wrote down during the trailer and during the Chris talk. So there might be some repetition, but I just didn't want to like lose any of my initial thoughts. So the fact that, again, you can hoard contracts in whatever you want. I really like the idea of doing a heist-only league. If that's what you enjoy, you could do it. It really depends on how the availability is. We saw this with blighted maps. Blighted maps were really profitable, though people were just buying all the blighted maps, running all the blighted maps. It really depends on the availability. Hopefully GG's learned their lesson with the less available stuff, and we won't ever be in a situation where it's like you feel like you can't do enough of the content. This will also depend on what GG decides with the whole contracts dropping from contracts. That's a pretty big deal. So if they decide that contracts can drop from contracts, it'll be much easier to chain the content. Hopefully the content is fun. It looks like it will be fun. Hopefully we can chain the content. Because again, it's one of those things, we never know if the league's going to go core or not. And it's a situation of, I'd rather do too much of the system in the league than, you know, only do barely enough in the league. And if it goes core at a later point at 10%, we never do enough of it. People who are saying, but you could overlevel the contracts. Sure, if you've got a level 1 contract and you're level 80, great. But like once you're in maps, it doesn't matter. You know, it's one of those things that it doesn't matter if you're doing white, yellow, or reds, because it's one of those things. If the loot is good from the whites, even if they're not giving you great XP, you'll still do them. And it doesn't matter if you're doing, you know, as soon as you're in red maps and you're earning them, it's fine, you know. Determinism. So there's apparently going to be some determinism between certain contracts giving certain rewards. So you should be going into your heist having a rough idea of what the reward's going to be. As you learn the systems, you'll start to know what to focus on, and that's always good. I'm sure there will be some min-max spreadsheets that turn up. There always are with systems like this, but it is fun having that choice. And one thing that's worth noting, even if something is the right choice because it gives you the most currency, it may not be the right choice for your build. If you specifically need one thing, you see this with Syndicate, like if you need like white sockets on your gear because your build has some awkward off-coloring, you'll favor targeting Verici more than something which is traditionally more profitable. Having options is always great. I really love that. With the 13 NPCs, that we could have some really interesting story, and unlike Betrayal and Syndicate had really interesting characters, really good dialogue, really good voice lines, but they all fucking talked over each other. Hopefully with this system, since you've got the smaller crews, and I imagine most of the dialogue will be happening like, hey, big dude with beard, open door, big dude with beard, open door, says his line. Hopefully we'll have a more dynamic dialogue system where it's like, it's nice little fluff, and it's not just a bunch of people just shouting at you and speaking over one another. With this whole replica unique system, so the replica uniques that you've seen in some of the press stuff, basically, there's like a variation of like fated uniques. When you do Grand Heist, you'll pick one. So you might be offered like 5 different replica uniques. You'll pick the one you want to go for. There's going to be 100 of them. That's just exciting. One of my favorite things in Path of Exile is having interesting items, open up interesting builds, and yeah, having very specific, very unique uniques is always a good thing. So 100 new uniques, effectively. That's fun. There's potentially going to be an enchant transferring system. So not as in like helm enchants from a lab, but we've seen specific heist enchants, and apparently the team has decided there may be a way that you could transfer heist enchants from one base to another. An interesting one we saw was all sockets are linked and % life on chest. That's obviously very huge. Getting a 6 link can be a real bastard sometimes. A less interesting but very powerful one we saw was 200% increased attribute requirements, 15% increased physical damage, and it was on a mace. So basically, it was like it had super boosted fizz rolls because it affected the like % fizz mod and the flat fizz mod and stuff like that. Powerful, not that interesting, but powerful. And finally, for people who've been having issues with tech, which is most Path of Exile players at some point in their Path of Exile career, apparently there's a massive tech patch incoming pre-heist. Chris said he'll be dropping a detailed post going over it soon, and there are hundreds of tweaks to Vulcan. So if you've had any issues with tech and you're concerned about performance going into Heist based on previous leagues, hopefully that should be much better. TLDR thoughts on the league. I think it's really cool. I love the theme. I think this could be a real fun one. Very much looking forward to getting my hands on it, doing some early testing. And yeah, just wish that I'd seen more, really. Would have been nice to just have seen some full runs, just so I could have slightly more informed opinions. Let me know what you think of Heist. Have a good day. Supporter packs are kind of whatever, by the way. Bye-bye.